so far at Barcelona and Silverstone last time out. Dylan Pereira holds on to third position thanks to 3 third positions over 4 races. Nick Tandy, the real world Le Mans champion for Porsche, in 4th position, has been fluctuating, let's say, in his performances across the last couple of weeks. Jackson Evans sits in 5th position, and then best of the rookies is Leon Köhler in 6th spot. But as you can see, nice and tight between these guys. They've all been arguing over that 3rd and 4th position spots throughout our races. Jackson Evans, by the way, is one of Porsche's junior drivers for 2020. Looking forward to getting that support underway when he can go racing for real. We have rookies, we have the Pro-Am category as well, and these guys we don't see too much of because they do tend to be at the tail end of the field. Mark Sini is the man who leads that little championship alongside his teammate from Team Australia, Stephen Grove, in 2nd spot. Philip Sager sits in 3rd, and we have a little story to tell about Philip. Sadly, he will not be able to take part in qualifying here at Spa-Francorchamps due to too many incident and penalty points that he's picked up over the last couple of weeks. Very, very easy to do so, Jan Seifert, because penalty points in this particular championship don't just mean contact between drivers, but they also mean track limits as well, don't they?
Track limits was one of the topics at Silverstone, so we saw many and plenty of cars using the track too much, so they're running too wide outside of the track limits, and so they got penalty points, and that will be one of the main facts here as well.
Leon Köhler is best of the rookies, 34 points ahead of, not 34, he has 34 points, and he's ahead of Jaden Conwright, who's kind of in and out of the top 6 throughout our 4 races so far. Max van Splinteren, though, really should be at the head of that field. Was fighting for podium positions at Silverstone, but sadly had a spin, had some contact and dropped to the tail of the field. So expect Max to move up for GP Elite as we get through this Spa doubleheader. Every weekend, every race day consists of a 30-minute practice session, which is happening right now, a 15-minute qualifying session, which sets the grid for our first 25-minute heat, and then we'll have a second 25-minute heat with the grid based on the results of that first one. So expect to see lots of people who do get caught up in incident in that first race still get back out on circuit once they perhaps have taken a tow back to the pits or been driving around with damage, because every single position will count towards that grid position in the second heat.
And also track limits and penalty points will be given after the race. So if you have any incidents happening in race number 1, it will not affect race number 2. So it will affect the final race we will have at Monza. So that's why all the classifications we see here right now on the screen will be the ones who are who will stay. For those who does not only want to follow the pictures, for those who want to also follow timing schedules and timings, we have set up a nice page for you, live timing page, which is porsche.racebot.tv, and you can follow all the action also in live timing there.
And if you do have iRacing installed on your system, that's the platform that we're using, and you can log on to iRacing and you can actually spectate within iRacing, which means you can be your own TV director and select your best friend to follow the progress of him. So loads of different ways to view and follow this Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup 3rd weekend or 3rd race day from Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium. And the big story that came out of Silverstone and the big talking point at the end of the day's action was the battle, once again, between Larry ten Voorde and Ayhan Guven. Now, those two have been locked together at the front end of the field for all 4 of our races so far. But in race 3 at Silverstone, on the very last corner, there was contact between the 2 drivers. Obviously, no drive-through penalties can be given during the race, but it does get looked at by a team of stewards. There's plenty of stewards that look at every single element of these races, from contact all the way through to track limits, and they pretty much have the ability to follow every single driver, don't they? Just the way that this back end works in iRacing, you can simply follow every single driver's lap by lap, corner by corner, to see where they've had issues either with contact or with track limits. And I think Race Direction have done a really good job at following all of those and handing out penalty points when needed.
Yes, and you're talking about the penalty points and the situation we had between Guven and Forde, and Guven got handed three penalty points for that collision in race number 3, as the first race at Silverstone, while most of the drivers got a warning because of track limits I already mentioned. So Stewart's really looking deep into all the decisions and all the incidents, and so that's also what it makes it so professional to see the Porsche Mobile 1 Supercup here as a virtual edition.
So track limits in qualifying, Jan, that's controlled by iRacing. So iRacing has kind of set track limits around Spa-Francorchamps. I did a race around here the other day. They're evil to find the kind of the limit of the track without overstepping them. But we don't use that system in the race. Is that correct?
Yes. So what we do is we have 2 main spots, or stewards will focus on 2 main spots, which is Radillon and Eau Rouge, and Blanchimont as well. So these 2 main points they will focus on, and so that's why we really have to have a look and have an eye on these parts. But what is different to mainly on the real racetracks is iRacing is not measuring the 2 wheels off track, it's measuring the center of the car. So the center of the car itself is the given measurement for off tracks or not off tracks.
And the main talking points will be Eau Rouge, which is a massive talking point in the real world as well, and of course Blanchimont so easy to allow the car to just run that little bit wider, open the steering wheel to try and keep the car balanced. There is Blanchimont, and I think that's a perfect example of how to do it properly, how not to run over. But if you take a little bit too much speed into Blanchimont and lose the rear end, you want to straighten the car up, but as soon as you do that, you're off track.
Yeah, sure. You do it for safety, and we saw kind of this situation at Silverstone when we had in race number 2, so the 4th race of the season, at the in the last lap of the race, when Jaap van Lachen he spun, and Guven just wanted to avoid the crash, and he went left on the outside of the tracks, and he got a penalty point for that because of or he got a warning for that because of off track. And here's the same as you say in Eau Rouge, right up here. Once you feel like you're losing the car, you just straighten the wheel and then go straight ahead, not to crash the car. But in the end, if you have like up to 5 infringements, nothing will happen. But there's a scale given from the stewards from Porsche, and so up to 5 infringements, nothing is happening. 6 and 7, you get 1 penalty point. 8 and 9, 2 penalty points, and 10 and more infringements, you get 3 penalty points, and this is quite a huge number. And you said it before, Ben. It's quite easy to increase your infringements here with track limits at Spa-Francorchamps.
So we're watching a car new to this championship this weekend, as in the real world. Porsche invite various VIPs and local drivers. So if you're at Silverstone, for instance, and you compete in the Carrera Cup UK, you have the opportunity to enter into the Supercup race when the Supercup cars come to town. We are in Spa-Francorchamps, and therefore the organisers have invited this particular driver to come and take part as a member of the Benelux Championship. And it just so happens that Loic Hartog is incredibly good at iRacing. So we may just have a 3-way battle at the front of the field this weekend.
I mean, one of the main scalings you can see is the iRating, and that's the fact you were saying. So he's fast, but he has quite a huge iRating. For example, he is 2nd or 3rd in the ranking of iRating, so the internal measurement system, how good you are and how fair you're driving and so on. And so I'm really much looking forward to seeing him on track.
So the format then is practice, qualifying coming up on the hour, and then 15 minutes later we'll get Heat 1. They do have a warm-up between Heat 1 and Heat 2, just to kind of settle their nerves and give us a chance to kind of reflect on how that first race has been, and then we will get back into the second race. Now I'm just watching on the back end of iRacing, and Aykan Guven has been kicked out of the session due to having received throughput fell to unacceptable levels. That's to do with his connection, right? One of those many things that you'll not have in the real world, but very much a feature of racing online.
Yeah, so you're suffering with different technical issues, let's say. So mainly technical issues here are with your internet connection, PC, monitors, whatever. So if your internet connection is too bad and you're missing too much data, iRacing is kicking you out of the session because of fairness and because of, we call it linking, because sometimes the other drivers cannot see the car anymore on the track, and so that's the problem. So they kick you out, but you can go back into the session, which is good. And once he fixed that, so he will be back here, and he has quite a lot of time as he just has to rejoin for qualifying now.
Yeah, so just a few minutes left, just 2 minutes left of this practice session, and then we can really get down to the serious nature of timed qualifying around Spa. Now it's a long lap, Spa-Francorchamps. 2 minutes and 21 seconds. 2 minutes and 20 seconds is the fastest lap that we are seeing in this practice session. So with a 15-minute qualifying session, you really have to be careful to make sure you keep the car within track limits and get those clean laps in, because you're not going to have many opportunities to set a good lap.
No, not at all. I mean, you only have a couple of laps, and as we have so many drivers, I mean, we have so many drivers on the track, to have a clear lap is also not that easy.
So practice coming to an end, and we'll be able to get in a few moments' time into the qualifying session and get the competition underway. Remember, we have Aykan Guven and Larry ten Voorde equal on points with 2 wins apiece, giving them 90 points heading into this race, round 5, here at Spa-Francorchamps. This is the midpoint of the season, Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium. Rounds 5 and 6 of the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup. A quick look at the 7-kilometre circuit. Part of it built in the 1940s, part of it built in the 1980s, when they decided to shorten the track that linked 4 Belgian villages into a Formula 1 spec circuit around the 80s. But it didn't completely shut to being roadways until the mid-90s. Some of the circuit was still used by public roads up until that point. An amazing place to go racing in the real world, an amazing place to visit, but an amazing place to race in the virtual world as well. My name is Ben Colson-Juris. Jan Seifert is joining me as our expert both in the virtual and in the real world. And qualifying for this third weekend is about to get underway. All the cars streaming out onto circuit.
Yeah, welcome, and it's nice to be back here, and one of my favorite tracks as well. So I really like this track because it's, I like the tracks built into nature, and it's a different driving style you have there, and that's what we will see as we see the cars going on track now, and now hunting for the best lap times. And I think it will be quite an interesting qualifying and race, 2 races as well.
Yeah, they've come out in a big queue, haven't they? This is kind of one of those qualifying races where they presumably are looking perhaps for a little bit of a tow, perhaps, Jan? We got some long straights here, and, Porsche is a beautifully designed car, but it'll still benefit from a bit of a slipstream, presumably, along those long straights.
It is still a GT car, and it's not a Formula car, which is not which is designed different. And but what we really see is we have the front runners in the championship in here, and as well our guest driver, let's say, in the 911 car with the car number 911, who's following Aykan Guven. So he's it's like Hardock from Porsche Carrera Cup Benelux, and he is also quite good in iRacing. So he's a really good driver in iRacing, and I think these guys just want to follow each other to push them even more. And now it would be the time to leave a gap for everybody in the queue, because otherwise there's no chance. Once you just passed Blanchimont, it's the chicane once more before start and finish, and then you start your timed lap.
Yeah, Hartog looks quite tucked up under the rear wing of Guven. Perhaps a good thing, because he'll be able to get a bit of a tow, and he wouldn't be expecting to be held up by Guven. Guven, one of our leading contenders. But let's go on board with Larry ten Voorde. He is the first man out of the pits. He was at Silverstone as well, if I remember correctly, and therefore clean track ahead of him. No tow, no one going to give him a slipstream, but at least nobody's going to trip him up as he comes into this first corner. A good opportunity to do a lap of Spa-Francorchamps. Jan, describe.
Yeah, we just passed La Source, the first corner, second gear, and then down here into Eau Rouge. So that first left kink. Actually, this is Eau Rouge, and now we go up to Radillon. We have to be careful with track limits. Track limits will be observed by the stewards mainly here, especially after the infringements we have at Silverstone. Then the long straight down into the next complex. Late braking here down into third gear, maybe second gear. Some of the drivers will use as well. And then you have to focus on the exit of this right-hander. This is important. Use all the track limit you can have. And this corner, the next right-hander, is quite interesting. You can have two different lines. Ten Voorde is having an early apex. He's going out in the middle a little bit, and then at second apex again. Then again, carry all the speed out of the left-hander down into a double gauche. So the double left-hander. So you brake late, but you try to keep the car on the line and now go back as soon as you can on throttle. Use all the track width to the outside. You see he's using a lot of curbs. And then another tricky part here, going into that right-hander, and now again carry all the speed out here. You have the artificial grass on the outside, which is pulling you out a little bit. Again here on the left-hand side as well. And then again carry the speed here through karting, not using too much track, because here on the left-hand side it's also track limit, part of track limit. And then we go to one of every driver's favorite part as well. It's Blanchimont. Up to here is all flat out, and then you just lift it a little bit or just hit the brakes slightly. For Blanchimont, the quick left-hander into the chicane, the so-called bus stop chicane, hard right, and then here try to keep the car clean on line, no wheel spin on the exit, as Ten Voorde had a little bit of it, and then crossing the line.
Now, my question is, how many of these laps are going to count, and how many of them are going to be disallowed due to track limits? He instantly bails out, he'll reset back to the pits, and then he'll go again with a fresh set. Interesting that he's done that, not many others have. I've only seen 3 times so far on the leaderboard that have actually been registered. So Ten Voorde was one, a 20.896. Jackson Evans, another one, second position. Nick Tandy, third. Most of these drivers have already completed a lap, but they're not showing because they've run over track limits. And when I did my race on, what was it, Thursday, I found exactly the same thing. I thought it was a clean lap, but I just nipped a track limit here, there, and everywhere, and found myself with a disallowed lap.
That's the most difficult part here at Spa, to really not using too much track limits. And as a driver in iRacing, you can immediately see if you have an off track, which is called, the track limit exceedment of iRacing. Once you see that, you can abort the lap, because there's no reason in qualifying to continue otherwise than practicing. But what Ten Voorde did, maybe coming back to this quick one, because he went back to the pit lane, he just braked too late for La Source, had a turn in oversteering, and so he just cancelled just aboard the lap, going back into the pit lane. Dylan Pereira here with the BWT Lechner Racing Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car. It's nicely looking, the Pink Panther, and he's also really experienced in iRacing.
Yeah, I'm disappointed to see that Michael Ammermüller is still not with us, the three-time champion of the Supercup. You know, one of the best drivers in the real world when it comes to these cars, but just hasn't been able to get himself adapted to the virtual edition. And we're seeing so many drivers like Jaap van Lagen, who is in this race, just struggling to have the feel in the virtual world that they would have in the real world. So some people are missing, and some people, it does kind of give the opportunity for some of these drivers that perhaps wouldn't be on the podium in the real world to compete well in this virtual world. And Dylan Pereira, as you said, has got a very good iRating, really well experienced, and now we're getting some times in, but nobody yet faster than Ten Voorde. And indeed, Pereira goes second position, so it was a good lap from Pereira. Now, what's the advantage of stopping on track and then resetting and going back to the pits?
Yes, so now after 2 laps, you try to get a new and fresh set of tires, while Van Vleuten is finishing his lap now. So, and with his second set of tires, so-called, you try and you go for another one and you go for another try.
Here is Max van Splinteren then, yet to set a lap time. That presumably is because he has done 2 lap times that have been disallowed. So we've got about half the field at the moment on my timing screen that still have yet to set a time, and we are about halfway through the session. So the track will be rubbering in. There is the offending curb up Eau Rouge and Radiant. Actually, it's Radiant, rather than Eau Rouge at the bottom of the hill. That curb is the place where you get pinged, because, again, it's the same old story. You lose the rear end, you straighten up to try and get the car to grip again, by which point your trajectory is facing off track, and the only option is to either spin out or to cut the track.
Yeah, and but even though for that reason, once you do it, you get an off track and your time will be cancelled. So it's a never-ending story, and you really have to be focused and concentrated. And for me, especially Spa-Francorchamps is one of the most difficult tracks. In case of track limits, for sure. The track itself is also difficult, but a very nice track. But in case of track limits, it's one of the most difficult ones.
So as I said, about half the field yet to set out a time. Leon Köhler is one of those guys. Köhler leading the rookie category, and was well up in the last race at Silverstone. Here he is on screen now. It's got attention. Is that Max van Splinteren just behind him? One of the GP Elite cars, and that's Koik. And so where's Koik? Has he set a lap time? I don't think he has either.
Yes, he has.
8th position. Yeah. Yes, he has. Yeah, there he is. So Koik maybe being slowed up by Köhler, but Köhler just needs to be careful not to run over the curb. That car in the background, perhaps Jaden Conright taking a bit too much curb, and will have that time disallowed. But let's see if Köhler's gone deep into the chicane, has to really slow the car up. And it's going to be, if it is a time, it's going to be a slow one. Comes over the line, and no, it does. Again, he must have pinged the track limit somewhere else on track. I think at this point I'd be resetting, because he's only got less than 5 minutes remaining. And if he wants to take a new set of tyres, then he's not going to have much time to do that and get himself a good lap, is he?
Yeah, I mean, what he could do is stop the car on track, go into pit lane quickly by using the hotkeys, and then just start another lap. But yeah, you have to just keep in mind that you have to do an outlap, and then you can start your fast lap, and that takes again another 2.5 minutes. And so he's running out of time, but not only him, there's so many drivers running out of time, but we only have this, let's say, problem here in qualifying. For the race, only if you exceed the track limits too much, then you maybe get a so-called slowdown penalty by the system itself, but otherwise the stewards will focus on the track limit, so it will not be the system itself in the race, it's just for qualifying here.
Now, interesting as we watch Jaap van Lagen struggling to get to grips with the Spa-Francorchamps circuit, a place that he knows incredibly well in the real world. Aykan Guven and Dylan Pereira separated by thousandths of a second for that front row start, and they are locked together on track as well, as we take a quick look at Nick Tandy flying through there. Here the two of them are, so Guven just ahead of Pereira, but Pereira is ahead in terms of qualifying by 600ths of a second. So it puts Guven behind Ten Voorde going into that last source, which is incredibly tricky to have a clean run through on lap 1. Then Leok Hartog is in 4th position, just 1700ths of a second behind. So incredibly close between 2nd to 4th position. But Ten Voorde, that opening lap that we ran on board with, 0.3 of a second clear over everybody else. Here comes Guven. Let's see if this is a better lap time this time through. Does he improve his time? It is a 21... No, he doesn't. 21.5. So he doesn't improve. Pereira doesn't improve. And I reckon they've got 2 more laps to go if they want it.
It's a really interesting qualifying we see here. And as I say, it's one of the most difficult tracks concerning track limits. So you can immediately here at Radion, you can immediately lose the lap, because once you're just one millimeter too far off, you receive an off track, and then the system itself will cancel your lap time. So there's nothing you can do. And now, as we are running here with the one of the 2 leaders of the championship, iRacing Guven, he's trying to push for another lap, as he's only 0.3 of the best time of Larry Ten Voorde, which is not too much and on such a long track. And we are here now again with Larry Ten Voorde, and he's trying to get another lap into his wheel for another try in the last three minutes.
Yeah, look very committed through the chicane. I wonder if this is the finishing of a lap. It is, and an improvement as well. Just under 0.4 of a second now clear of everybody else. So Ten Voorde stamping his authority here at Spa-Francorchamps on early doors. We've seen improvements also for Jukka Honkavori, who's popped himself up into 9th position just a few moments ago, and Leon Curler's managed to complete a lap. He sits 10th position now. Lawrence Van Thor sits in 11th just behind him. A couple of our celebrity star drivers. Van Thor's been competing in the IMSA race that we've been seeing every Thursday evening, European time, and that's really fascinating GT racing to watch, and Porsche trying their best to overhaul the other manufacturers in that championship. So far haven't managed it, but another race to come next weekend. But again, still I would say, was that 7 cars without lap times, Jaap van Lager being one of them. To be fair, they are mainly the guys at the tail end of the field who have failed to complete a lap time. Here's Dylan Pereira. Is this going to be an improvement for Pereira? No, it is. It is an improvement. So 2.5 tenths now back from Ten Voorde, and just takes himself away from the threat of Guven behind. And Guven's just reset to the pits. So is Guven now going to have enough time? He's not, surely. No, 15 seconds remaining, so Guven is not going to improve. He's going to stay in 3rd position as we watch Nick Tandy come to the line. Tandy sits in 6th position right now and matches what he did before, but does not improve. So Tandy stays in 6th position, and his qualifying hasn't been that strong. That is the end of qualifying. That is the session over. And therefore, we can take a quick look at the grid with, I think, 6 or 7 drivers failing to take the flag. Larry Ten Voorde on pole. Dylan Pereira in 2nd. Ikan Guven, his lowest qualifying, in 3rd. Leok Hartog, the guest driver, in 4th position. Then Jackson Evans 5th. Nick Tandy 6th. Jesse Van Kuijken in 7th. And Leon Curler improved up to 8th position by the end of the session, ahead of Joey Mawson and Jukka Honkavori. Max Van Splutter and I bigged him up, but he's only in 11th position ahead of Lawrence Van Thor. And then Patrick Pilet, another of our celebrity drivers. Jaden Conright will be improving from 14th, no doubt. Christian Engelhardt, hopefully, well, he's in the wrong place again in the middle of the pack, but he'll try and keep himself out of trouble. In the Hugo Boss car, it's Julian Andelauer and Richard Leitz in 17th. Jean-Baptiste Simonauer in 18th. Simona Di Silvestro 19th. Fabian Vulvend completing an all-female row 10. Jordan Love 11th. Then it's the drivers who didn't set a time. Marcini, Marius Nakin, Pontus Frederiksen, Jaap van Lagen, Roar Lindland, Clement Mathieu, and Mathieu Lorena finishes the 28 drivers that we've got entered into this third day of racing at the virtual version of the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup. The cars are all getting onto the grid. Watch out for that horrible hairpin at turn 1. Braking zone on cold tyres into the right-hander. Always a recipe for disaster. And hopefully these guys can get through nice and cleanly. Waiting for the lights. The last car at the back of the field enters the session. And we're off and away and running. And it's not a very good start in the middle of the pack. There's a couple of cars very slow, and it's very aggressive from Guven, who's made a great start, and he makes it 3 wide to try and go around the outside of Larry ten Voorde. Oh, it's Tandy who's got caught up with Hartog, I think. So Hartog has spun around. He's right at the back of the field. And plenty of chaos even before they got to the first corner, but then plenty of chaos through the first corner as well. Watch out for track limits as they go over the rise at Raidillon. And Dylan Pereira's done a great start to keep with these front two, but already ten Voorde is defending heavily from the leader going into Les Combes as there's battles further back as well. Guven trying to go around the outside of ten Voorde. Ten Voorde needs to give him room through the second part of Les Combes, which he does so. But these two, remember, at Silverstone did so much arguing that they never really broke away from the guys behind. And at the moment, Dylan Pereira is in shooting distance to get in the mix.
Yeah,
Fourth position, Leon Köhler has made a fantastic start from 8th. And Lance Vanthor sits in 5th position. So real mix-up of things. We've got 6 cars in the pits. Nick Tandy, Christian Engelhardt, Julian Andalauer, Richard Leitz, Mark Cini, Matteo Lorena, and Loic Hartog. We'll see a replay of that in a few moments' time, but plenty of cars were ready at the tail end of the field.
Yeah, so what a start it was, and what a first couple of corners. And we again see this battle here in the front between Larry ten Voorde and Ayachan Guven. And Dylan Pereira, as you say, he's in a very nice spot. And Leon Köhler, he did exactly the same at Silverstone. So he was in the nice seat for having a look onto the first battle.
Here's a replay of Pontus Frederiksen. Yeah, he just lost the rear end. I was wondering whether he was going to have contact from behind, but he just... Maybe he was looking in his mirrors and thought he'd try and brake a little bit deeper, but car looks pretty badly damaged as well. It's certainly not going to be driving straight. I wonder whether he will bail into pit lane to get that car repaired, because he doesn't want to do 25 minutes with a really badly handling Porsche Cup car, that's for sure. Lap 1 then. Larry ten Voorde, Ayachan Guven, Dylan Pereira, Leon Köhler, Lawrence Vanthor, and then Max van Sputteren up to 6th position after that poor qualifying. Jackson Evans down to 7th, and Jesse van Kuijke in 8th spot, with Honkavori and Mawson rounding out the top 10.
Dylan Pereira and Leon Köhler, we saw very nice in this camera angle. They used very much of the track limits, maybe in my eyes a little bit too much, but stewards will have a look on that. But you see again, there's a little the picture we saw in the first couple races. The first two, they are battling between each other, and the others they can not easily, but they can follow. And as they are fighting so hard, maybe they cannot put a gap which is too much to the others, and we can see very nice fights later on.
I'm afraid we've lost 10 cars now into pit lane as we go back to the replay of the start. So there was a very poor start from Patrick Pilet in the middle of the field. That's how Christian Engelhardt lost control and crashed into a few others. Oh, and Tandy was just too hot into La Source and got into the back of Luc Hartog, and then Hartog, recovering, managed to crash into a couple of people. Here is a replay of Patrick Pilet, who very slow.
Yeah, and then it was just, you know, a reaction of like chain reaction, and nobody really could avoid the crashes. And the situation with Hartog and Tandy, it was exactly the situations you see at La Source after the start. So Hartog left a little gap on the inside, and Tandy was going for it. But then Hartog was closing that gap, and so they crashed into each other. So for me, it's an it's a race incident. So there's nothing. I think there was nothing on purpose because the gap was there.
Guven squabbling all over the back of the gearbox of Larry Ten Voorde ahead of him. These two have been the stars of this championship. Ten Guven, that's a melange of the two of them. Guven, one of the Porsche Junior drivers for this season, alongside Jackson Evans, Turkish driver who's won in Carrera Cup a couple of times already, but also has won a lot in iRacing, and very accomplished virtual driver as well, crawling all over the back of Larry Ten Voorde. Both have had good success in the Real World Championship as well. So it's not a case that these are kind of complete reverse results of what we see in the real world. Both of them are hot prospects for the real season when we get started.
Yes, they are. They came along the Porsche One Make series, and so they really well know the car they are driving, the 911 GT3 Cup car, and what they say is here in iRacing, and as with the nice support from Porsche and iRacing, the car itself is really driving like the real Cup car, and so that makes it much more interesting then.
I think we're seeing a replay of Koike, just bailing out of a move there, but the car looks absolutely horrible already. So he's been involved in some contact at the start of the race, which means that car cannot be driving very well either, and effectively losing 2 positions there by the looks of this Koike.
We have Jackson Evans here fighting with Van Sprunteren. Coming out of double gauche, so they are really fight hard. And Jackson Evans, he's always one of the guys always in front, not on the very top, but he's always right behind the pack, and so he's showing really nice fights here in the Cup car as well.
Yeah, so as I said a little earlier then, we've lost 10 drivers in pit lane. None of them yet have come back out, I don't think, to try and improve their grid position for race 2. So Clément Mathieu is the last of our runners in 18th spot, Fabien Vulvend in 17th. Sadly, Simona Di Silvestro, the other female racer, was caught up in that accident, so she is in pit lane getting the car repaired. I wonder whether we might have actually starting to see cars coming back onto circuit. So Christian Engelhardt looks like he maybe won. Interesting, Patrick Pilet. I thought he was the man who got really caught up and kind of created the start line incident, but he's lying in 12th position right now, as you can see. So Pilet maybe with a car that's not necessarily straight, but it is working for him, and it's great to see Dylan Pereira really involved in this lead battle. He's obviously been putting in some practice over the last couple of weeks as the two leaders squabble going into Le Carme. Again, Guven on the outside. It's very brave to do that because you need compliance from the driver ahead of you to give you the space through the second part, and then you're on the wrong side for the third part. But Ten Voorde really struggling through their Carme, and here comes Dylan Pereira trying to find a way through as the two of them defend. Contact between the two. Ten Voorde has been nerfed into the gravel trap, and Dylan Pereira now leads.
Oh, that was a push from Guven, and let's see in the replay. So we have Guven in the green and white car. He goes for the inside, but Ten Voorde, he's closing that gap before, and Guven is just giving a little kiss on the rear end of the 911 Cup car of Ten Voorde, and then he just spun into the gravel. I think the race stewards will have a look on that. What is not affecting is this classification. So now we can see it again here. So that was the kiss to the rear bumper of Ten Voorde coming from Guven.
Guven so late on the brakes, but Ten Voorde so defensive in his move. Very, very difficult to apportion blame once again, and a slowdown penalty for Guven. He's back right out of it, so he's dropping now to third position. And whilst it's all been plain sailing for these two so far, all of a sudden Guven's almost fading into the clutches of Ten Voorde. Maybe he is. Maybe he's saying, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I don't want more penalty points. I'm going to back off, let him through. I mean, is this something the race control will say that's okay with it as Ten Voorde goes up the inside of Van Thor?
I mean, sure. Well, because it's just a fair move he's doing. I mean, in the end, it's the decision of the stewards, but it looked to me exactly the same as you say. Guven was waiting for Ten Voorde, but now we have the situation that Dylan Pereira, he had the nicest spot with Leon Köhler, and now they are in the lead, and we have a nice pack of 4 drivers fighting here, and also this is one of a nice fight going into Eau Rouge side by side, which is really close.
Squeaky bum time as they come up through Eau Rouge. Max van Splunteren just about fighting, actually sitting behind Jukka Honkavori. We didn't see Honkavori, and he's got a slow down. Honkavori got a slow down there. That's why he's slowed right back, and Van Splunteren takes the advantage. But very, very close between the two of them, and you really need compliance to get through Eau Rouge and Radiant cleanly side by side. Jackson Evans now looking feisty, looking down the inside of Lawrence Van Thor. You see, now that's the way to do it, Guven. That's the way you make the pass stick. But also Van Thor not quite as defensive as we saw from Ten Voorde. So Ten Voorde now just ahead of this battle, up to 3rd position. Guven 4th. And let's see what they can do about chasing down our leader. Dylan Pereira has a 2.4 second advantage over Leon Köhler. Larry Ten Voorde is 4 back. Does he have the pace to claw it all the way back before the end of this race? 13 minutes and 55 seconds remaining, so it's about half a race to go. Be amazing if he does so.
I think when you see these guys, Ten Voorde and Guven behind, they are fighting back already their way to the front, and I think it doesn't take too long until they are at the bumper of Leon Köhler, and once Köhler is clever enough, and I know he will be, so he will let them go through, because there's no chance to keep Ten Voorde and Guven behind. I think when he's clever enough, he just let them pass, and then he's going with them to maybe close the gap to Pereira.
You're a racing driver. You don't let people through and take a pass. You fight for every bit of tarmac, don't you?
You do, but once you feel that the pressure behind is so much. I mean, as you say, we are halfway through the race, and these two guys, they are really on fire, and they are on spot with the times and on speed. I mean, for sure, he's not just waving them by, but once he feels the pressure in his back. And if it's the pressure, it's too much, you just give them the chance to overtake. You don't open the door and say, okay, let's go, but you don't really defend as you would do with guys on the same speed.
Yeah, so Ten Voorde and Guven a second faster than anybody else on circuit right now. So all of a sudden we're really seeing them getting their heads down, and that gap to Leon Köhler, as you predicted, has just disappeared. Start of the lap, it was 1.3 seconds. It's now less than half a second, and the pass isn't going to be done necessarily in the infield section. There's not great opportunities to pass, other than perhaps around the campus section. But certainly when it comes to going into the chicane and through Blanchimont, as long as they don't get caught out by him backing off too much through Blanchimont, it's kind of looking inevitable, isn't it? And they will want to clear Köhler because they'll still have their sights set on victory in this race as they go through Pouhon or Double Gauche or whatever. Spa changes its names of corners so often. I was very sad that you called it karting. It's Stavelo to me, or Paul Frere, but karting just because there's a kart track on the inside. But, you know, it's one of those things we could do a whole 20 minutes about, right? Yeah?
Correct. But what we do is we focus on that fight now. Köhler in the black and white car, and in the orange-white car, it's Larry Ten Voorde. He is at the bumper, and now you will see what I mentioned before. He will not really much defend. I mean, he's on the inside, sure, and he tries to keep Ten Voorde behind, but I think he will let him go, you see, so because there's no way, as you say, these two guys, Guven and Ten Voorde, they are 1 second faster than anybody else, and here's Guven also slips through for third position.
I think Guven lost less there than Ten Voorde. Ten Voorde, slightly compromised, not quite knowing where Köhler was going into Blanchimont, whereas Guven very clearly down the inside into the final chicane, having to go a bit defensive through La Source though, and Köhler's not making it easy for Guven whatsoever. Thinks about it, gets the flashers on, thinks about coming down into Eau Rouge, not advisable, and then sits into the slipstream. Now Köhler's done a sensible thing, because he can now slipstream Guven all the way up the Kemmel Straight, and this is up. This is not a flat piece of road. It does go up. When I was racing a smart car, yes, I raced a smart car at Spa-Francorchamps, I exited the top of Radion at 106 miles an hour, and I finished at 96 miles an hour going into Les Combes, just because of the lack of power, but also the hill that the Kemmel Straight is on.
I think we have to talk to Oliver Schwab, the manager of the Porsche Mobile 1 Supercup, to give you a gas start in a real car, in the 911 GT3 Cup car, I think.
What do you mean? What are you saying? A Smart's not a real race car? No, you're right. Let's focus back on the action. Jukka Honkavori down the inside of one of the GP Elite cars. So Jesse Van Kuijke and Max van Splinteren running together. And so Honkavori losing out to Kuijke there. And actually Kuijke is the one with the really damaged car. It's not Van Splinteren. Van Splinteren in 7th looks a lot cleaner. So a nice little battle there. That's for 7th, 8th and 9th position. Jerry Mawson rounds out the top 10. And like we've spoken about before, the usual thing here, great to have drivers all around the world competing. Team Australia, for instance, Mark Sinney and Stephen Grove are part of this. Where are they? Are they both out? They're both in the pits. That's such a shame, especially as it must be the middle of the night in Australia, and they are competing from over there. We've got Americans competing from America, New Zealanders as well. So plenty of time zones being mixed up to take part in this Super Cup. Generally, that's the reason why we see racing, virtual racing, happening in the evening, because it means that more time zones can access that particular race.
Yeah, and as you're speaking about the teams, what I really like is to see Team GP Elite. Larry Ten Voorde is running, for example. It's a new team to the Porsche Mobile 1 Super Cup, also in the real series. And now they are leading the championship here in the World Tour version, which is nice as a newcomer team. They did guest starts, but now they are a full entry for the whole season and leading the championship here, and also leading the championship overall with Larry Ten Voorde, equal points with Guven. But so that's what I like on the one-make series from Porsche.
And I think that was Mark Sinney getting out of the way of the leading drivers, which is good news. It means that having been caught up in that first lap accident, Sinney is now back out onto the circuit as Honkavori carries on fighting with Kuijke. Kuijke on the inside, Honkavori late on the brakes into Les Combes, but takes back that position. If you exit Radion in second spot in your group, you are likely to be first going into Les Combes, and that's exactly what happened to Honkavori. I like those Finnish names; they just bounce so nicely off the tongue, don't they? Jukka Honkavori then will set his sights on Max van Splinteren just ahead of him and try and get himself up into 7th spot if he can shake off Van Kuijke, because Kuijke now can sit in his slipstream and do it all again. The fight for 2nd position then. Half a second faster than the leading driver. 2.6 seconds is the gap between Pereira in the pink car, BWT Lechner Racing, and Larry Ten Voorde and Guven, who are still squabbling, but they will know. They will know, Jan, not to pass each other aggressively, block pass and slow each other up. We saw it at Silverstone. We saw their advantage at the end of the race, only about 4 seconds because of it. Now they're not leading. They will be desperate to catch Dylan.
Yes, they try everything to get him, but also they fight for the championship, So it's a different story to Leon Köhler. Now nobody really let the other guy pass on purpose. So they are, for sure, they're aiming for Dylan Pereira in front, but also they are aiming for the better spot on the podium.
So let's take a quick look at points, because they are obviously vitally important. This is a championship. They're there are wins to be had as we look at Honkavori and what's happened to him. Replay through Blanchiment, all good through there, into the braking zone of the chicane at the end of the lap. Oh, very hot, and loses the rear end as well. One position down, not too much harm done, but he's going to have to chase down Van Kuijker again.
Yeah, that's a kind of situation you see quite often with the 911 Cup car, because you always try to have the maximum braking power on the rear, and if you have a little bit too much, then you can lose the car quite easy. So, and that's what makes it so special.
Guven now really starting to hassle Ten Voorde ahead of him. And actually, Leon Köhler is still only 1.6 back, so they really are distracting each other. They haven't made any progress on Pereira at all. And I was just about to talk about championship points, because 25 for the win, 20 for second, 5 points difference. 17 for third position. That is more of a difference between second and third than it is between first and second. And presuming Guven and Ten Voorde dominate the rest of the series at the front of the field, and Guven beats Ten Voorde in the next race, 1-2, the fact that Guven finishes third in this one, and the difference in points between second and third, would mean Guven would lose the championship. And so this is why we're starting to see Guven, instead of working together with 4 minutes remaining, he's now wanting to get past Ten Voorde anyway, regardless. Van Lagen in the com through the third part of it, takes a chunk of curb, car's unsettled, and just nudges the barrier.
Yes, so that's what we saw from him in Silverstone as well, because as we have the tire model is exactly the same as in real. So with more laps on the tires, it's more difficult to drive, and you really have to get a feeling for the car, and maybe that's kind of practicing. He has less than the other drivers to get this feeling.
So Mark Sinny, as we were talking about him just a little bit earlier on, one of the very few drivers to go back out on the circuit after the first lap accident, and he's proving profitable because he's moving up through the field. He's now 19th, and presumably by the end of the race, he's only a lap behind Patrick Pilot, who's in the pits, and therefore Sinny should get himself into 18th spot. So that will be row 9 on the field, as Van Lagen's been off track again by the looks of things. Jordan Love, Van Lagen's teammate, blimey, got caught out massively by Sinny, who is very slow on the inside, and Love well off track. Is Ten Voorde. This is a replay going up towards Les Combes, and Guven is looking very aggressive here. Contact between them again, going into Les Combes, unsettled, and Guven's going to be able to go around the outside. No, he's not. He's had to take evasive action. He's had to cut the track, and surely that means Ten Voorde will get past again. It will be a slowdown, won't it, Jan? More contact between them. Now it's getting messy.
I think so. Surely Guven will be given a penalty or an infringement, especially for that cutting the track there at the Les Combes. But I was wondering that he didn't give the position back immediately, because it was sure that he just gained the position because of cutting the track there. So yeah, I think it's not over now. We have a couple of minutes only to go, so it's a couple of laps, and it looks like Pereira is securing his first spot there, but which is not secured is position 2 and 3, and that's also the chance for Köhler in 4th position to maybe, if they are not sure about their positions here, Guven and Ten Voorde, then maybe he is also the lucky one.
So 1 minute and 20 seconds remaining. The leader is already over the finishing line. Therefore, we are now onto the last lap. Dylan Pereira has driven a very, very clean race. His pace has been good too. It's not been remarkably slower than these two, and therefore it looks to me as though he is on course to taking his first virtual victory of the season. But for our championship contenders, who have some 40 points more than Pereira in the championship, it is getting personal. The gloves are off. These two are fighting hard. Guven quite a way back from Ten Voorde as they exit Radion. Is there going to be enough of a slipstream to get him down the inside? I don't think so. He's not going to be close enough, is he? He's going to really gain a lot of momentum, but he's going to have to be brave on the brakes into Lecombe, and not close enough. So really, for me, one more opportunity to get this done into the chicane on the last lap. That happened at Silverstone on the first race at Silverstone, and there was contact. Will it happen again? They built such a lead, by the way, that even though there was contact, Ten Voorde still managed to finish in second position. But Ten Voorde does not look comfortable. He looks slow. Van Kuijke, what's happened to him? Here's a replay. Van Kuijke on the skirts of the top 10. Heading into Lecombe. And Joey Mawson looks down the inside. Oh dear. Oh, interesting. What's going on there?
So Mawson was quite late on the brakes, and there's a time also you have to. So Van Kuijke has to turn into the corner, and he was waiting. He saw that Mawson goes for the move, but he was way too fast, and so he touched him, and then he just so Van Kuijke just spun off.
Right then, coming to the final sector of the lap then. It doesn't look close enough between Ten Voorde and Guven. This might be the turning point in this championship, with Guven finishing only in third. That contact going into Fagnes, or Brussels, sorry, and pushing Ten Voorde down a few positions. Guven giving up positions to equal him. It's handed the victory to Dylan Pereira of BWT Lechner Racing. His first victory of the season. Ten Voorde will pick up second, and Guven will pick up third position. Further back, Köhler is going to have fourth spot. Jackson Evans in fifth. We're looking at the Vodafone car further back. Jordan Love and Fabian Vulvend fighting over 14th and 13th spot as cars ahead of them complete their races. Looking forward to seeing a few more drivers rejoin the field, having retired out of this first race after contact at La Source. Ooh, and Fabian Vulvend fancies a move going into Blanchiment. Her car still looks relatively clean, unlike Jordan Love's that we've seen in the wall a few times, and maybe under brakes she'll have the opportunity to improve her lap position once more, although she's going to be under attack. Her rear end, oh no! So Frederiksen managed to pick up 2 spots. Love's been deposed, and Vulvend down 1 at the very last corner as well. And she's a Porsche invited driver. That's naughty. That, I think, is pretty much all of our drivers over the line now, isn't it?
It is almost everybody. I think we're here with Clément Mathieu. He's one of the last cars on track. He's not the last car, but he's last car on track, finishing now in a 17th spot. And once he crossed the line, we finished race number 1, which was a very exciting one, I think. And that makes me looking forward to race number 2 with all the drivers again in the field.
So then, let's take a look at the provisional results of this first race here at Spa-Francorchamps. Round 5 of the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup Virtual Edition. Dylan Pereira is the victor, ahead of Larry Ten Voorde and Aichan Guven. Leon Köhler in 4th position with Jackson Evans 5th. Lawrence Van Thor, the best of our VIPs, in 6th position. Max van Splunteren 7th. Jukka Honkavori 8th. Joey Mawson 9th. And Jesse Van Kuijke in 10th position. Points all the way down to 15th. So Jaden Conroy 11th. Marius Nakin 12th. Pontus Frederiksen, Fabian Vulvend and Jordan Love picks up the final point. Jaap van Lagen missing out. Clem Mathieu, the last of the drivers on the lead lap, with Mark Sinny finishing the race, although 6 laps down. Matteo Lorena was another driver to get back out onto circuit, and unfortunately we did lose Patrick Pilet a bit later on in the race, with Roar Lindland, Simone de Silvestro, Jean-Baptiste Simenauer, Nick Tandy, Loic Hartog, Richard Leitz, Christian Engelhardt and Julian Anderlecht all caught up in a La Source mess on lap 1. So time to go and grab yourself a drink. Perhaps you could, I don't know, you could go and make yourself a coffee or grab some food. We've got 15 odd minutes before we get ourselves into race number 2.
Lots of information, especially like track notes from a previous Porsche Junior, but I'm also in contact in advance with the race director when it comes to track limits, for example. We have an onboard footage from the last season. This is followed by a track walk. We really look at all the details, what they have to be aware of. Then when they go into the car for free practice qualifying, I'm monitoring them on track, and while the session, I'm even connected with them via radio if they want to, so I can give short advices or instructions. Then after the session, we go to the point where we do data analysis, and in really individual one-on-one meetings. And this is really special and unique. And the winner of the rookie classification will receive a funding of PHG of 30,000 euros at the end of the season in case that driver will return for the next season. So that rookie program is really something valuable.
But are there any upgrades for the season, or what can the rookies expect from this season?
So obviously we have been working on the program during the off season. So we had a debrief and got together and we're talking what was good, what was bad, or what we could improve. And we will focus also a bit on the off-track support, or what we can do on for the rookies, such as we have a 2-time fitness check at the beginning of the season, after the season, or to let's say at the end of the season to see if they improve. We do also some media training, make them use to send a race report, because in the future, when they work with other teams, they expect that there will come a race report of every driver, so that this is getting a habit for them. And in case maybe some of the drivers have a leak of mental strength, so we help them to find a solution for that. But what we also found out, and what we also will focus for the upcoming season, is like some team building spirit. Because when they go, or when they focus in the future for endurance racing, it's really a team sport. So if somebody is very egoistic, this is a bad habit, and we try to really work on that as well.
So far, Marco Seyfried, the rookie coach of the rookies in the Porsche Mobile 1 Supercup. And I think it's a really nice program. You can see also so many drivers starting as a rookie in the series with the support from Porsche and now becoming factory drivers, junior factory drivers and so on. So I think Ben, maybe as you were driving in a wrong brand, maybe there's also kind of a chance for you, isn't it?
I'm not sure I'm good enough, genuinely. Especially, I can't get my head around a normally balanced car. So the unique quirks of driving a Porsche, both virtually and in the real world, I think I'll stick to cruising down to the local supermarket in one, rather than trying to get the very, very best out of it around Spa. Although, if you are watching, Oliver, I'm very, very happy to have an invite. When all this washes over and I'm able to travel around the world, and we're all able to travel around the world again, yeah, why not?
Yeah, and coming back to that rookie coaching and that program, I don't know which brand and which manufacturer is having so much support or giving so much support to the junior drivers, because these people, they showing up good performances in other series or in other races, but they're coming in there and nobody really knows how good they are. And but Porsche is putting so much effort into them and so much support into them, and then they prove it. So I think, I have no real numbers, but I think it's about 99 or 98% of them becoming factory drivers or professional racing drivers all over the world. And I think that's one proof of the success of the program.
And another very interesting kind of crossover over the last couple of years has been their support of virtual world racing, and of course most notably of the Tag Heuer esports, effectively iRacing World Championship, the Porsche Supercup, Carrera Cup, and their attachment to someone like Joshua Rogers, who won the championship last year. He is now racing, probably right now, racing for Porsche in the Formula E sim racing that's happening right now. So he's been invited by Porsche to race for them and represent their brand because he'd done so well racing in the virtual world. So we're starting to see that crossover as well, which is very exciting.
Yeah, and then we have, in general, the approach from Porsche going into esports with, as you say, Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup, and now raising a new championship with the GT4, with the 718 Cayman Club Sport car. So they are driving in the same, on the same day as you say, the World Championship. So, and then it's kind of a chance for the rookies to get a first feeling, get a first touch of the One Make Series, the virtual One Make Series, and maybe get step up in the next year and the next season to the World Championship.
And that support from Porsche of the Tag Heuer series is, well, it's doubled effectively since last year, and bringing in some famous names. Max Verstappen took time out of his pre-season kind of preparations for Formula One to make sure he qualified into the top 40 for that series, so that if he can, he will take part in it.
And I mean, he did it on just on his own time and nothing. Yeah. There was no invitation, nothing. He said, I tried to qualify, and once I qualify and I have the time, I will participate. And I think that shows off the strengths of that series. And I mean, in the end, it's all about or it's also about the prize money Porsche and Tag Heuer they are spending there, isn't it?
Absolutely, and amazing to see, and so wonderful that the support that Porsche have historically put into motorsport generally over the last 60, 70 years is now overflowing into the virtual world in such a huge way. They're not doing this because we're all locked down. Yes, okay, this particular competition is a kind of a reason to get all these real world drivers together, but Porsche's support in the virtual world extends way beyond the start of this crisis and has, as been pointed out by our producer, doubled in terms of the prize money even that the winner of the Tag Heuer series will pick up. $100,000 last year, $200,000 this year. Josh Rogers is going to be a very rich Australian, I tell you, if he can keep that form going.
Or again, another chance for you, Ben. No, just kidding. But
Definitely not.
But no, I think also the approach they do is quite nice. And what I like at the moment is there's no real motorsports going on. And when I'm saying real motorsports, I love that World Show, and I think that is real motorsports. But you know what I mean with on the real tracks out there. So there's no motorsport going on, but all the factory drivers participating here. And whenever do you have the chance to either drive a cup car or an RSR or whatever, even though a Cayman Club Sport, a GT4, against the real factory race drivers and Formula E Porsche drivers. So I think it's a good way they approach.
But one of the lovely things about esports over the last couple of weeks that I've really thought hard about, we are sitting here watching professional racing drivers drive the cars that they will be driving in the Supercup. Once this is over, once you've had your entertainment, you can jump on to this very platform and jump in that very car and race around this very track and do exactly the same thing as these guys are doing. And that is not something you can do in the real world. You cannot be sitting on the banks at Spa-Francorchamps and then jump into the exact same car that your heroes have just been racing and have your own laps. And I love the accessibility that this allows the world of motorsport fans to have.
And now?
I mean, I know that you can, Jan. You'll be racing a TCR next week, won't you, virtually? And then in the real world, when you can, you'll be in the same TCR car. But most people can't.
Yeah, I mean, you will have the chance to do all that stuff. And even though, and what I said early in the race, the support from Porsche and or the cooperation Porsche and iRacing is so strong, and all the data goes into iRacing, the real data of the cars. So that's why driving makes it so real, with all the performance in the car and all the things the car reacts is exactly the same like in the real race car. And so that's what it makes it so nice. So once you guys go onto the platform, onto iRacing, and you start driving the 911 GT3 Cup car, you exactly feel what these guys feel in real life as well.
So what is making the likes of Jaap van Lagen sit at the tail end of this field rather than being at the sharp end like he would be if this was a real race around Spa?
I think I really like what he's doing, because he's facing the challenge. So you know what I mean. So but he's not like hiding and saying, okay, that's nothing for me, or saying, okay, that's I'm not fast enough. But he's facing, or he's one of those. It's not only him, but he's one of those facing the challenge. Even Richard Leeds, he's also facing this challenge, or Jackson Evans, Julian Andlauer. So all the professional drivers not really in touch too much with sim racing. They are facing it. I like it. For sure, he tries to perform better, but it's all about practice. And so I think that's the right way. Try and error, and not to try.
So just a couple of minutes left of this warm-up session, and then we will get the second race of the day underway here at the Spa-Francorchamps virtual version. Of course, laser scanned to an inch of perfection, or even a millimeter of perfection. So this very much feels and looks exactly the same as if you drive around the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. It's kind of now, I suppose it's kind of a given, isn't it, that all these top-end simulators do simulate these tracks so well.
They simulate everything. They simulate the racing line, which is warmer than offline. They simulate the marbles. They simulate wind. They simulate sun spots and shadow spots, everything. And you really have to calculate with it. And I think that's perfect. And I hope that sim racing is becoming more famous within the situation we are currently now, taking the performance out of it.
Fingers crossed we get to see the likes of Nick Tandy and our driver for this particular weekend's worth of racing, who was right at the sharp end in practice, but sadly, Loic Hartog, who is just there at the back of the queue, unfortunately unable to get round the first corner. Kind of got binned by Nick Tandy. And so we didn't really get a chance to see what he could do fighting with our leading contenders. But hopefully, in the second race, at the tail end of the field, they'll all take it a bit more carefully through that first turn, and then we can get racing underway. So warm-up is over, and we reset. That's that little flicker. Cars disappear from pit lane, and they'll start popping up on the grid. There they are. That's the drivers lining up and getting into this particular race, with Dylan Pereira on pole, Larry Ten Voorde second, Aykan Guven third, and Leon Köhler in fourth position. This is the result of race one. Jackson Evans, Lawrence Fanthor, Max van Splutteren, and Jukka Honkavori in 8th position. Joey Mawson 9th and Jesse van Kuijke in 10th position, with Jaden Conright 11th and Marius Nakin in 12th. Pontus Fredriksson 13th, Fabian Volven 14th, Jordan Love 15th, Jaap van Lagen down in 16th, right in the middle of the pack. Clement Mathieu, Mark Sinney, Matteo Lorena, Patrick Pile, who caused the mess on the start, finishing straight in 20th. Roar Lindland 21st. Simona Silvestre, we've seen in the top 10. She starts 22nd. Jean-Baptiste Simonauer, Nick Tandy 24th, expect to charge. Loic Hartog 25th, expect to charge. Richard Leitz, Christian Engelhardt, and Julian Andelea, 3 celeb drivers at the back of this 28-car grid. And we're racing once again. Who gets a bad start? Jackson Evans doesn't get a particularly good getaway. There's contact in the middle of the pack, and one car goes spinning right in the centre. Doesn't get collected. But, oh no, we see Leon Köhler going round from 4th position. He gets fired into the air. Jackson Evans again facing the wrong direction. Somebody else invisible hit at the back of the field. And Lesource does the same thing it always does again. Larry Ten Voorde well off track, just about saves it. I thought he was going into the wall there. Very, very close. But Dylan Pereira holds on to the lead. Jordan Love has retired at the top of Radiot. He's out of the race. We've got plenty of squabbling for 4th position because nobody seems to really be wanting to be there.
And Ten Voorde, he had, because of his off track, he had a slowdown. So that's why he's right here in there. While we see some other cars crashing there. Jaden Conright.
And Jaden Conrad going backwards. Van Splutteren was also facing the wrong direction as well. So a really mixed up grid. That's Lawrence Fanthor, who I think is in 3rd position right now. Why is he in 3rd position? Because, of course, Larry Ten Voorde dropped down to 7th spot. So Larry Ten Voorde is not the first of the GP Elite cars as Fredriksson hits the wall. It's actually Van Kuijke who's in 5th. In those familiar colours, and it was a huge slowdown then for Ten Voorde, who's now just in 6th position. Behind Joey Mawson and Lawrence Fanthor.
Yeah, Lawrence Fanthor, he is now the one in a 3rd position. As I say, Roar Lindland off track and coming back, rejoining the track, but the car doesn't look really nice. We see quite a lot of cars going off track now, so it's quite of hard fights at the moment. I think quite a lot to do for stewards to see all the incidents.
They do a comprehensive report of all the off-track action. We got about a 10-page document after the last race from Silverstone. So Dylan Pereira coming towards the finishing line, and he's going to take another lap. Leads race 2 here at Silverstone, 3 wide for 3rd position. Lawrence Fanthor surviving that. Van Kuijke going wide. Joey Mawson 5th position. Ten Voorde in 6th. Nakin is 7th. Jaap van Lagen is in 8th position. That's heady heights for Van Lagen on the virtual world. Here is Jordan. Oh, it's Fanthor who goes deep and then comes back onto circuit and somehow manages to hold on to his position.
Yeah, I mean, it was clever from him because as he did that move, there was no slowdown for him. So, because he rejoined the track right where he left it, so it was quite clever. But it was a little bit of a mess. But we are now here, as you say, with Joey Mawson in a 5th spot. It's a bit of a mess in the beginning, but while Laurie Tenforde is making his way back to the front of the grid. And
so that was past Joey Mawson. And we've had a change for the lead. Guven's ahead of Dylan Pereira. So somewhere, presumably going into Le Com, that has changed. And does this now allow Guven to stretch his legs and get away? Let's have a look. So he was actually ahead already going up the hill. So it must have either been in La Source or going down into Eau Rouge. Got La Source very late down the inside, and that is how the position changed. So Guven will now get his head down and clear off, presumably, because he will not want Tenvoorde chasing him down. Good battle, though, for 3rd position. Laurens Vanthoor somehow still ahead. Tenvoorde surely should make easy work of Van Kuijke, although Kuijke is in a much better position than we've seen him the last couple of races. We go on board with Tenvoorde through campus, so-called, because there's a university on the inside, or a college, if you like. This is the corner that Jan called karting. Boo hiss. And then we head off towards Blanchimont.
Yes, and we have the 2 teammates behind each other. So we are here on board with Laurie Tenforde. In front of him is Laurie van Kuijk. And going through Blanchimont. Better exit here, looks like, for Laurie Tenforde. And maybe he tries to do the move against his teammate into bus stop chicane. Yes. And now he's right at the tail of Laurens Vanthoor in 3rd position. So you see, Tenforde is Laurens Vanthoor, and now he's making his move back to, or making his way back to the front.
And you can see why, when we ride on board, you can see why you need compliance from the other driver, because you can't turn your head unless these drivers are running VR and virtual reality goggles. You can't turn your head to look to see if he's still alongside you. You will be told by iRacing if there's an overlap, but you kind of want your own eyes to look at it. So that's why you need to have belief in the driver that you're passing, that they have actually allowed you the space. Now, Tenvoorde in the slipstream of Laurens Vanthoor. Vanthoor sits to the inside, keeps going over. Now that is a beautiful way of defending. No erratic manoeuvres, and kept Tenvoorde behind him. Certainly not as fast as Tenvoorde, and all of this is frustrating for the Dutchman because he will want to get onto the tail of Pereira and Guven. Now he manages to do it down the inside at Brussels. Or Bruxelles, if you like.
Now Tenvoorde back in 3rd position, Vanthoor into 4th position. So now it becomes much harder for Laurie Tenvoorde to close the gap to Dylan Pereira, and then even though to Ayeshan Guven. And it's up to Laurens Vanthoor to defend against Van Kuijk. Jesse Van Kuijk now tries to go for the inside line, but there's no way to go through here.
Very close, though. It's very close. Got to be careful not to make contact. Certainly don't want the wrath of the race stewards. And Vanthoor's driving a clean race. He's not fast, but he's driving a clean race so far. You've just got to be patient. Find the right place to do it. A little bit of oversteer from Van Kuijk as he was coming out of there. The battle end just trying to get away from him. But he still has the slipstream. And so as they come towards through Blanchimont, bravery, a long fade on the brakes from Vanthoor. That should allow Van Kuijk at least to get a little bit of a run on him going into the chicane. He looks to the inside. Not close enough, though. Oh, and Pereira. I've just seen Pereira spin at the front. So Pereira recovering, and Pereira has dropped out of 2nd position. Let's see what happens here, Jan. And I think this was just overzealous on the throttle.
Yeah, I think so, because there was nobody behind, and also Guven was too far ahead. But let's see now, going into bus stop chicane here in the right-hander, no problem at all. Into the left-hander, and then he was just too strong on the throttle, and he also touched the wall, which is not so nice for the rear end of his car, because in iRacing the damage model is quite sensitive, and you lose immediately drag, and that's why it's not so good for him when you see his rear spoiler to his rear wing, which is a little bit damaged, you see here.
And he will feel that now. He will have this weird sensation of perhaps oversteer that he didn't have before, and maybe it'll be unbalanced between going through left or right hand turns. So Pereira's got a lot of work to do. Dives up the inside. Gosh, that was yeah. I was about to say that was brave, but it wasn't brave, it was silly.
Yes.
I mean, is where's the second GP Elite car? Did he take a car off with him?
It looks like he did.
Yeah, Van Kuijker it was. Here's the replay. So they go through Le Combe, and he's going to fire it down the inside late on the brakes. And they both run wide. Now, was he put off by the blink? Was that the problem?
I think so. I was wondering if that was the reason, because it didn't look like he was going for a move to the inside. He just tried to get out of the way of the blink, the bad internet connection of Jesse Van Kuijk. And so I think that was the issue. And then once he came up, so Van Kuijk came up, and but that was too late for Dylan Pereira to.
Oh, Van Lagen!
Van Lagen spun.
How did the other car keep going? It's got literally bounced off him. That was a replay, I think. Van Lagen in the pits then. We've lost about half the field, would you believe, as Nick Tandy goes down the inside looking for 5th position. Tandy's trying to get past a heady Marius Nakin. He's never been this high up. 5th position for Marius. He'll be absolutely loving this and the opportunity to fight with that Nick Tandy. Just behind is our guest driver, Luke Hartog. Tandy looks to the inside, but Nakin's very late on the brake. Surely the switchback is on offer here. And easy pickings. Nakin will learn from that. Don't be too overzealous on the brakes, because you'll be nibbled up straight away by the Mobil 1 car.
A very unlucky Nick Tandy in the last couple of races. And even here, he is struggling a little bit, but now going into top 5. And let's see if he can close the gap now to Joey Mawson in 4th position. But a very, very strong Laurent Fantor in 3rd, while we have the usual battle in the front at 1 and 2 with Guvin and Ten Forde.
So we're about halfway through. We're just coming up to halfway through this race. We've lost about half the field in pit lane. So the likes of Jordan Love, Christian Engelhardt, Max van Splutteren, Leon Köhler, Mark Sinney, Clement Mathieu, Jaden Conwright, Yuka Honkavori, Patrick Pile, Jaap van Lagen, Jackson Evans. All of those drivers have been into pits and are either back out on circuit or have retired. And then, so at the front of the field, Guven leads Ten Voorde by 5.5 seconds. Van Thor in 3rd position has a small advantage over Joey Mawson. And then Nick Tandy in 5th, Marius Nakin in 6th, Luke Hartog in 7th, and Jesse Van Kuijk in 8th, Dylan Pereira only 9th now, and Julian Anderleya, who finished last and retired first out of the first one, is in 10th spot and having a little battle with Simona Di Silvestro. So great to see. Here is Di Silvestro, who's actually in the clutches of Richard Lietz. So there's are 2 very well-known Porsche names. Di Silvestro, the test driver for the Formula E team, and not sure which category Richard Lietz is racing in this season, but certainly in GTs. It'll either be in America, in WEC. Do you know, Jan?
Yes.
Your knowledge is better than mine?
I can tell you. I was sitting next to him. I was sitting next to him in the plane coming from Austin, and yeah, he's doing.
Flew to Spa. That was very committing of you.
Yeah. So he's doing WEC. He's doing also the ELMS. So all the stuff in the Porsche RSR Le Mans for sure. So he's just waiting for confirmation of this calendar, while he just passed Simona Di Silvestro.
I suppose everybody these days is waiting for confirmation of their calendars. It's all totally ripped up. The calendar thing is something I love about motorsport, being able to fill in my Excel spreadsheet of the calendars of very different championships. Here's Loic Hartog getting past Marius Nakin for 6th position, and Nakin's going to look to try and do the same again. Looks to the inside but can't make it happen.
And you know, Hartog, he's one of the guest drivers from the Porsche Cup Benelux, and he was starting at the back of the field. While we see the replay here going out of Radillon with a better end and quite a lot of track using, I would say. And the Hartog, he's quite good in iRacing, so he's proving that. So coming from the back of the field, going now into the first spots, into 5th position.
Oh dear, car on its roof. Julian Andalea, that's a shame for him, having his best run so far in this competition. And what's happened here? Lost the rear end of the boss car, and is he going to be collected by... Oh, I was about to say Simone Di Silvestro, but it wasn't.
It was Richard Leeds, but because of the blinking again, I think there was no way for Richard to avoid the crash, because he didn't see the car, and once it came up, he was already in that car. So that's a kind of situation for those in real racing world drivers have to keep in mind. That's kind of technical issues we aiming here in the virtual world.
Yeah, absolutely. You might have a car problem or a mechanical problem in the real world, but it's all down to your equipment at home, your computer and your internet connection, and all of those things can fail, even for you and I. I know that you had lots of problems last week. Di Silvestro and Fabian Vulvend have got together down at Stavolo. What's happened here? So I say she, both of them are she's. Di Silvestro down the inside, and Vulvend did not see, and they both rear end the barrier.
And for me, that was that kind of situation you mentioned before. So she was not seeing the car next to her. So, I mean, Di Silvestro was on the inside. She didn't see that, and Vulvend didn't see to the right-hand side, and she just turned in. So that's kind of race incident.
Joey Mawson, here he is. Look, I said that he's had a bit of an up and down season so far. Sits 7th coming into the championship with his best result in the second race in Barcelona, and Lawrence Vanthoor's just run deep going into La Source and opened the door to Mawson. So Mawson's looking on course now to get his first podium. He took 4th in Barcelona in that second race, but now is one step better. He's got to be careful though, because Vanthoor has Nick Tandy just behind, and Tandy, we know, has been pumping in the fast lap times. There is Tandy. Tandy's got Loic Hartog behind. Again, one of the fastest men on track. In fact, last time through was the fastest man out there. So Hartog is going to try and find a way past Tandy. Tandy's got his blinkers on because he knows that, and he needs to clear the 2 cars ahead. Mawson and Vanthoor looking for his second podium finish. He picked up a 3rd position on the first race at Silverstone just last weekend.
But also Hartog in the 911 guest car right behind. Here we can see him. He's also at the tail of Tandy, and they're trying to improve, or to make his way together with Tandy to the podium, sitting in 6th position.
On board with Hartog, let's see the inputs. Let's see how he is handling this car into the braking zone.
Late on the brakes.
Deep. Very, very deep. Hugs that sausage curb on the left-hand side.
And what you can see from the onboard is very exactly the same. What it looks like, not only visual-wise in the graphics, but also with the steering wheel. What the drivers do is what you see in the real Cup car as well. So always that kind of little bit counter steering and correction, and that's what it makes so. That is Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car driving, and that is too much track width, I would say. Yeah, so if they get too many of these incident points, then they could potentially miss out the opportunity to qualify, as Silvestro has gone round and round again.
So the fans will like that. If they get too many penalty points, then they'll lose the ability to qualify for our final round of the championship, which takes place in at the Monza circuit in a couple of weekends' time. So as we get to the sharp end of this championship, more and more points are being accumulated, and therefore we may see a couple of penalties when we get to that final round.
Yeah, I think so, as we see so many crashes and so many off tracks. So I mean that makes it much more interesting. Not too interesting is the battle in front, but we are not used to that, as Guven and Ten Voorde usually fighting close to or bumper to bumper. But here, that fight, Mawson, Fantor, Tandy, Hartog, these guys, they will go for another 6.5 minutes. And here it's all about the last step of the podium.
Yeah, so remember, if the positions stay as they stand right now, Ten Voorde will leave this, just trying to do some mental arithmetic, he will leave this weekend with the lead of the championship, and he will be ahead of Guven because of the fact that they finished second and third in that first race rather than first and second. So it really could become very penalising, that move into Brussels in that first race. Unless things happen in Monza. And of course, Monza being a slipstreamer and hard braking zones into chicanes, anything really could happen there. But advantage Ten Voorde, even if he loses out to Guven in this second race.
It looks like that Fantor, I was watching him now, he's struggling a little bit with his brakes. Again, he was struggling with the rear end of his car going into La Source. That makes Tandy going close to his rear end, and now using the slipstream, and maybe we can see a move from Tandy in the Mobile 1 car here going into Le Comp. The two factory drivers now fighting here tail to tail.
Tag Heuer versus Mobil 1. Vanthor goes to the inside line, but he's also very late under brakes, and perfect defense. Like Hartog will be looking to try and get involved here. Guys, dives to the inside. And a very good move from Hartog there. Absolute opportunistic move. Saw that Vanthor and Tandy had slowed up, and that was, not only was that beautiful, but that was contactless. That was great stuff.
That was a nice move. We're here on board again with Hartog. He was far away, but now as Fantor and Tandy were fighting into Le Comp, it was his chance. Here, that was the move. Tandy had to brake a little more out of that left-hander, and that was his Hartog's chance to pass.
And that's not a common place to overtake as well. That's kind of a local special, isn't it?
Yeah, so... Mistakes Fantor. Mistake Fantor. You had to count, you had to correct because of oversteering, and then now Hartog is now up in fourth.
So Mawson third, Hartog fourth, and now Vanthor and Tandy at the back end of this little queue. Little mistake there from Vanthor, just running a little bit deep, a little bit wide. We've not got much time left as well. Just under 4 minutes remaining for these guys to sort each other out. I'd like to see Hartog get himself a bit of clean air and see what kind of lap time he can do, because he is very much the fastest man out there on circuit. Here comes Nick Tandy into the chicane. He has the inside line as well. Vanthor didn't defend, and Tandy should be able to take this one nice and easily. Lets the car roll in and blocks on the exit there and takes the position. So it's Mawson, Hartog, Tandy, Vanthor, third, fourth, fifth and sixth right now, and they're 4 seconds ahead of Jassy Van Kuijk. Here's Dylan Pereira trying to promote himself up into 8th position to the outside into La Source.
What a race it is. Very nice fights also here. 8th and 9th position. Marius Nacken and Dylan Pereira. They are fighting here for 8th and 9th. Going into Eau Rouge, up to Radion, and then with a slipstream on Camel Straight, maybe Pereira can make a move against Nacken.
To the outside though, Nacken's gone defensive, and Pereira's had to pull out of the slipstream quite early, but I don't think Nacken has the legs. He's still got a little bit of overlap, but Nacken just fades out of it in the braking zone, and Dylan Pereira then our race 1 winner up to 8th position. And has about a 1.5 second gap to Jesse Van Kuijk in 7th ahead of him, but I think progress will then be stunted after that. A reminder, Van Guven leads the race. The Turkish driver has already taken 2 victories so far this season, and his main chief rival, Larry ten Voorde, also with 2 victories. The faster of the 2, but 5 seconds back after a little scrap at the start of the race. And then it's the battle we've been watching early on. Jerry Mawson 3rd, and that man, Luc Hartog, in 4th position with the more experience on iRacing. Mawson is still got the basic iRacing rookie license, so he only races in these kind of invitational races. He's never done any public iRacing.
Yeah, I guess he is doing quite a lot of private testing. Then iRacing is not racing as well, but you're totally right. So this guy here, Hartog, Luc Hartog, he's in advantage just because of his iRating. And now let's see as we go into the last lap now with 1 minute and 10 seconds to go, and we see the flasher of Hartog against Mawson showing, hey, come on guy, I want to go for this last step on the podium.
Surely he has an opportunity here to get himself into 3rd. Not close enough to pick up a huge slipstream. Sometimes this is good. If he can get a better run through Eau Rouge and Radion, then he can just continue that momentum all the way up the Kemmel Straight into the slipstream. I just don't know whether he's close enough here. He's not going to have many opportunities around the lap. He's drawing in, he's getting closer, but he's not going to be close enough into the braking zone of Lecombe to do it there. It's progress though. The gap down to 0.4 of a second from 0.8 just a lap ago. Now drive the middle sector nice and clean. Leave nothing between them so that at least into the chicane on the last time you can get the move done. He's right on the tail here of Jerry Mawson, putting Mawson under pressure. This is a man with an A rating on iRacing, racing a rookie driver on iRacing in the professional virtual edition of the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup. The battle for 3rd position. It's all established at the head of the field. Guven and ten Voorde are in their positions, but it's question mark over the 3rd spot. Jerry Mawson, as I said, has never been this high. He'd never picked up a podium yet. He'll be desperate after waking up so early in Australia to get this done. And now the last opportunity will be into the chicane. Just got to make sure you get Blanchiment absolutely perfect. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, here comes the Turkish driver, Erkan Guven, to take his 3rd victory in this virtual edition of the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup. It's been a faultless drive by Guven. There has been contact once again over the race at Spa-Francorchamps, but he takes victory ahead of Larry ten Voorde, and there's no swap for 3rd position unless there can be a better drive out of the final turn. No, they can't. Mawson holds on. Hartog in 4th spot, and then our 2 big pros, Lawrence Van Thor and Nick Tandy, round out the top 6, with Marius Nakin coming home in 9th position behind Dylan Pereira, the pole man, the winner from race 1, will be frustrated to finish so far down. That's his worst result of the season so far. And another man who got into trouble, Jean-Baptiste Simonauer, heads towards the line, takes the checkered flag, and he'll pick up points. I think anybody who finishes, basically, is picking up points from this one. Such has been the attrition and the challenge of Spa-Francorchamps. The Vodafone car then of Fabienne Vulven. We saw her go round with Simona Di Silvestro. Almost a pirouette together down at Stavelot. But she will finish the race, and she will finish in the points. So a battle of attrition overall, with 28 drivers starting the race and only 13, 14 drivers finishing the race. but an entertaining one, as we have come to expect from this virtual edition of the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup. Ayçen Guven for Turkey, for Martinet by Almeres, 5 seconds ahead of Larry Ten Voorde in the end, with Joey Mawson picking up a podium in third spot. Loic Hartog, the guest driver, fourth. Nick Tandy and Lawrence Van Thor, fifth and sixth. Jesse Van Kuik, seventh. Dylan Pereira, his worst result, in eighth position. Will he hold on to that third in the championship? Marius Nack in ninth. And Richard Leitz rounds out the top 10 after plenty of contact. Jean-Baptiste Simonauer in 11th, Pontus Fredriksson in 12th, and then Fabian Volvend, Jackson Evans, and Matteo Lorena rounds out the top 15, with Simone Di Silvestro 4 laps down, and the rest of those drivers all retiring or in major contact out the race. Shame to miss to see the likes of Christian Engelhardt. In fact, he didn't even start the race, such was his frustration on from race one. Leon Köhler should have been at the sharp end, and Honkavori's been proving entertaining, but those two right at the back of the field. We've got a little break now before our final round of the championship, which will take place in the Monza circuit in Italy in a couple of weeks' time. An opportunity for all these drivers to perfect their technique in both the car and around the challenging Monza circuit. Spa-Francorchamps, though, as per usual, has entertained, Jan. A special place to race, an entertaining and challenging place to race as well.
It happened what we expected. It will be a challenge. So we expected the challenge, and it was a challenge for sure. But in the end, we saw again a very nice fights between all the pros, as the pro sim racers as well. So as I call like Ayçen Guven, he's kind of a pro sim racer as well, beside being a pro real racing driver. But I'm really much looking forward to the next race. As you already mentioned, we go to the track of Monza, and Monza is a kind of slipstream track, let's say. So you really have to work together with your teammates, and I think especially for qualifying, there's a little advantage for Larry Ten Voorde, as we have with Jesse Van Kuik, a guy as his teammate. He can help him, while Ayçen Guven, there is no teammate on the same level as him who can help him. So I'm very much looking forward to this battle already starting in qualifying, and I think nobody should miss that.
No, absolutely not. So let's look at some of the key moments of this race. The start, and a little bit of contact right in the middle of the pack. Is that it's not Pile again, is it? No, Pile's further back. Difficult to see. Honkavori it was who got spun around first on the start, finishing straight. And then there's contact between Leon Köhler and Jackson Evans. Evans, the man on his roof, and Köhler on his roof. Evans helping him round for a second time, and Evans getting himself back underway again. Here's a look then at Honkavori's start. How did he end up facing backwards, Jan?
Let's see. It was in the middle, in the, let's say, carbon area, as we call it. Let's see what happened to him. We are now again on the replay of the start, and it looks like he got a touch from. He had a really bad start, and then he was trying to go to the inside line, but then he touched. I think it was Conrad. He touched. And then he got spun and facing in the wrong direction. So it was his bad start, making him in the position he is now.
The lightest of touches to send him round, but you can see how damaged the car was, and instantly decided to get out of it and get back into pit lane, not before coming across the car on its roof. One of the things that doesn't happen so often in real life. The Porsches don't bounce quite as much as they do in the virtual world when it comes to accidents. But sadly, we ended up on that first lap losing so many drivers. Jordan Love was another driver. Christian Engelhardt didn't even start the race, so we didn't lose him. Leon Köhler and Clement Mathieu, I think they came back out onto the track and ended up doing a couple of laps just to try and improve their position. But Jaap van Lagen was another one we lost out. He had a big crash, and In the end, 16 drivers off the lead lap, which is quite a decent amount on a grid of 28.
I think stewards will have a chat with all the drivers before the next round and the final round of the virtual Porsche Mobile 1 Supercup. And I can tell you from my experience, they will, because I had a chat with the race control, not only me, but all the field of the Porsche Mobile 1 Supercup had a chat at Spa Circuit a couple of years ago, also because of track limits and crashes. So they will do, because what we want to see is hard fights, but fair fights. And so I think we will have a very nice and strong race or two races at Monza.
And what's key about this championship over so many others that we're seeing being competed in is that this is being organised by exactly the same people that organise the real world events. So they're treating it in exactly the same way. They're sending out bulletins. They are briefing the drivers exactly the same as they would do in the real world. And actually that is quite unique in what we're seeing over the last couple of weeks. A lot of the virtual races that we're seeing are being run by virtual companies to represent the real world, whereas this is very much done by the guys at Porsche Mobile 1 Supercup.
I think that's a good advantage from Porsche, and a good way to start. I think what we have to do is in sim racing, we have to let's say divide into the sim racing communities. They do their stuff, and this is good. This is perfect, and that is what the sim racing community is living for. But we also trying, and Porsche is forcing that to have a professional sim racing with a professional reglement, with the professional briefings and so on. And I think these two parts of sim racing makes it so interesting. So we have the huge community and the professionalism on the other side.
So then we're talking about Monza. When is it? When can you follow the final round of this virtual edition of the Porsche Mobile 1 Supercup? Well, Monza will take place on the 16th of May. So a little bit of time. You've got yourself a couple of weeks to perhaps go and do the same thing. See what your times are like. Best times in this race around a 220. Maybe you can get a better time and compete, and then find yourself perhaps in the Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup in the future. Just try it out, and maybe you're a pro driver watching this, and come and contact Porsche and see if you can get yourself a guest drive in the near future. There's so much sim racing to enjoy, both by watching and also by competing, and that's the great thing. We're not here showing you something that you cannot do. We're showing you something that is accessible to everybody, that you can enjoy whilst the world is going upside down. We have this amazing community of virtual racing going on, and I'm a bit sad that it'll end in a couple of weeks' time in the middle of May. I want it to continue. I'm not sure we'll see real life racing for a few more months, so can we have some more rounds, please, Oliver?
Yeah, that is a good request. And for those who cannot wait to see Porsche GT3 Cup cars driving around circuits, on 2nd of May, the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup is starting into their season with the pro sim racers. So as we have the pro racing drivers from the real world driving here, there's the Esports Super Cup with the pro sim racers at circuit of Zandvoort. To be honest, that besides Spa, Zandvoort is also one of my favorite tracks, and I really like it. So don't miss that on the 2nd of May.
And me. We have we share the same like for the same tracks. I have a picture of 3 racetracks above my office computer, and Spa is one and Zandvoort is another. Or actually, is it? Yes, it is.
You see, we have to drive in a race car on all these tracks, Ben. So then, not only commentating on that, but I'm very much looking forward to the whole season in sim racing, and when we go finally on the real racetrack with the Porsche Mobile 1 Super Cup. I'm very much looking forward to that. I cannot wait.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Jan. I know you're very busy with plenty of other commentary this weekend. There's so much virtual racing going on. We will have the final 2 races in Monza on the 16th of May, and it will be Larry ten Voorde who will lead the championship going into that, a couple of points ahead of Ayachan Guven. Those two fighting each other for victory in the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup Virtual Edition. Thanks for joining us. See you then.